Can I get your attention for just a moment? Thanks for coming. My name is Allan Thompson. I'm a huge fan of the Blyth Festival.
So are we.
Good. Coincidentally, I'm also a Liberal candidate in Huron-Bruce in Southern Ontario, and so I love the festival. I go there whenever I can. And when they were in Ottawa, wanted to make sure they got as much attention as possible, so we came up with the idea for holding a little gathering here. And for those of you who don't know, it's like 40-some years in business, does Canadian productions, tells 45 years, tells rural stories from mostly from Southern Ontario. And the one you saw tonight is a classic, kind of a sad, tragic, but really important story from Southern Ontario. So I want to ask Gil Garratt, the artistic director, and you will have seen him on stage tonight as the Pigeon King, just to talk to you a bit about the story and the company and anything else he wants to say.
Thank you, Allan. And thank you all for being here. I really, really, truly appreciate it. I'm so grateful that you could be here tonight with us. And as I was just showing back there, yes, it's true, I had to take all of this hair off in front. Yeah, somebody was asking me about getting into character and how that goes, and I confess that my wife has forbidden me from speaking in Arlen's voice at home, but she's been forced to live with the hair. It's incredible, really extraordinary. The Blyth Festival, for those of you who don't know our story, really started from a handful of actors who were in, rehearsing a show in Blyth, Ontario, in just outside of there, in a little barn, and created a show that was about farmers in the community, and they ended up having so many people show up to see that show in that barn that actually they didn't have enough chairs for everybody, and people ended up sitting up in the loft and sitting up in the rafters to be able to watch this show that was about farmers. And that was really the inspiration that began the Blyth Festival. And so to be here 45 years later, with annual revenues somewhere around $2 million, and to have that kind of achievement over the course of this 45 years is really extraordinary. To date, we've premiered more than 135 Canadian plays that were born live. And so to be able to take this show in particular, a show that we worked so hard on, and the artists are here tonight, I want to point out some of them. The co-creators who helped invent this show in the first place, Rebecca Arbach, Brigitte Solon, George Meanwell, Jack Nicholson. I also want to point out Greg Gale, incredibly enough, has stepped in for one of the original creators, Jason Chesworth, who stepped out, and Greg had to learn the whole show in what? Basically like 6 days. 6 days. Yeah, an incredible job. And for those of you who don't know as well, in creating this show, we actually interviewed dozens and dozens of farmers. We also interviewed people like the arresting officer that took him down. We interviewed the Crown prosecutor who tried him. We interviewed all kinds of people who were involved, some amazing journalists who broke the story. And one of the most incredible things about the show, I think, was in great evidence on opening night here in Ottawa, which was 2 of the victims who had been taken for thousands and thousands of dollars. They came opening night. They had actually seen the show originally in Blyth when it first premiered, and they came all the way to Ottawa, and they brought a bunch of their friends because they wanted them to see the show. And to me, that's so incredible. It's actually one of the things we discovered when we first started researching the show was the amount of shame that people had about what had happened. And to be able to see them hold their head that high, that kind of dignity, is really incredible. I'll share a similar anecdote actually from the very first year that we did the show. There was a phenomenal thing that happened, which one of Arlen's salesmen, who had worked for him for 5 years and never figured out that the thing was a scam, and had sold over 100 contracts to people, including his own son at $125,000, and his son bought in 3 months before the whole thing went under. Father and son came together to see the show, and they were there on opening night, and they came running across this crowded reception to all of us, and they were just shaking our hands, and they were so effusive, and they told us how they loved and loved this show. And then he actually turned around, went home that night, and went back to the people he had sold to and told them, you got to get to Blyth and see this show. And actually, a lot of the people he'd sold to were Amish and Mennonite Old Order people. And so he used his own van to go and pick folks up and bring them to the theater. We would come out on stage at night, there'd be a couple of rows of nothing but beards and bonnets, and we would know he'd been out there again. So to be able to take part not only in creating what is, you know, an electric and brilliant night at the theater, and I think an incredibly original piece of entertainment, but to at the same time be able to offer that kind of healing to a community is really extraordinary, and speaks to the efficacy of what a great storytelling can be. So yeah. And then we're going to do a whole bunch more shows this summer, so you really should come to the Blyth Festival. Come and see us where we practice and where we are. I mean, it's incredible to be here in Ottawa and be able to bring the company here, but you would be amazed at what we're able to do back home on the farm. Thank you.